You're listening to the Recovered Life Show, the show that helps people in recovery live their best recovered lives. And here is your host, Damon Frank.
And welcome back to the Recovered Life Show. It is episode 87, Friday, March 18th, 2022. How you doing, Kristina Dennis?
I am doing great. It's Friday.
It is Friday. Can you believe it? Here we are again.
Yes,
Friday.
I can.
It's a beautiful day in Southern California. I'm sure it is in Orange County as well.
It is. It is. Still a little coastal fog burning off, but it's quite pretty. It's going to be a beautiful day. The weather has been unbelievable.
It's going to be a great day, and it's going to be a great weekend. We thank everybody for joining us for episode 87. We've got a great show for you today. It's going to be really good. We've got two really powerful segments, and we've made it through the week, which is always exciting when we're doing live streaming, right? Like, never underestimate getting through the week live streaming. It's a huge accomplishment. And here we are.
Yes. The technical part that people don't see behind the magic is a lot of work, and you do such a good job taking care of that for us.
Well, thank you so much. Before we begin here, I just wanted to throw out that this episode is sponsored by the Recovered Life contributors and listeners like you. So if you're listening to the show, thank you so much.
Make sure you like, share, and follow us. And another way to contribute is to visit info.recoveredlife.us, where you can make a donation and join the network. Make sure that you look at info.recoveredlife.us.
Yes, thank you so much. And guys, if you're not part of the Recovered Life Network, please join. It's totally for free, recoveredlife.us. And you can get in there and join the bigger conversation. Kristina, let's head right into the show here. This first episode I thought would be a lot of fun. The first segment I thought would be a lot of fun to talk about. It was.
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Because I have to tell you, I'm sure we disagree on this.
I think so.
It was an Ask Amy article from the Mercury News, and Ask Amy is kind of like what would you say Ask Amy is? It's like a advice column.
Absolutely. She's kind of like Ask Abby. Do you remember that? Or Dear Abby, I guess is what we used to call it in Ann Landers. So for sure, people reach out to her and ask questions about relationships and different things that are going in her life. And she gives out, I think, really, really great advice.
She really does, and I have to say, I'm not somebody who, I don't think I'm the target demographic. I'm going to be honest with you with the Ask. I don't think I am, but I do watch it every once. I do read it every once in a while. It will pop up on the news feed or something, and I will I will read the article. But the funny thing about this article was it was really about this woman who's talking about a man that she wants to marry, a long-term relationship. And I think they live together. They're talking about they live together. And he is always intoxicated.
Absolutely.
Always intoxicated.
They're both young. So let's start with that. But she had made a decision. She used to smoke marijuana with him. And it was part of how they bonded originally. It was like a third person in the relationship, this reliance on it. Now she made a decision to quit, go to college, get her degree, and has chosen that she will not partake. And she wants to ask her boyfriend / fiance, because they did talk about long-term, marriage. She wants to be able to ask him to try sobriety and to quit long-term, but she's going at it in a way that it would be like, let's try it. You do it for a month and see. And then long term, her real want is that he remains sober like she is.
I have it up on screen for the people who are watching on YouTube, Facebook Live, all that stuff. I've got it up on screen. And for those of you who are listening on the podcast, I'm gonna read some of it here because I found this I found this quite entertaining, to be honest. I thought it was kind of hilarious to a certain degree because, and I know that's probably mean by me saying that, but it's basically she's asking this question. It's like this guy is inebriated. He's basically high all the time. Right. Like they don't have a relationship unless this guy is high.
That's right.
I was just like, this is just a this is just a recipe for disaster.
Right. It's a precursor, absolutely, to things not going as planned. And I can tell you, I've been in this situation and I've worked with a lot of people since we talk about codependency and I'm a codependent expert. A lot of people find this in their situation where they've moved on, they've bettered themselves, but the person they love is happy or comfortable with continuing to use substances.
Yeah, and I would, when we were talking about this before the show, I said, "Man, I would do you get this a lot in codependency coaching?" He's like, "Yes, all the
All the
time."
time.
It's like, and my whole thing would be like, move on. Like, if you're sober, if you're not deciding to do this and you're with somebody that they're high all the time, that is like, I mean, that those little cartoons where the person's up there and they've got the flags and they're like, don't go any further. And they break through
Hmm.
15 barriers. That's what this has for me. That has this written all over it. Like the whole thing that we learned in early recovery. It's like, no, I can change them. I
Right.
mean, it just like,
Well, I'm going to throw something at you. So, my husband and I are very happily married. We've been together for 6 years, but he was drinking when I met him. I had no idea that he was drinking, abusing alcohol because he never drank around me. And once, I was already in love. He didn't drink around me. I had no idea. It's kind of funny because when you first get sober, you're analyzing everybody's drinking and you presume everybody is an alcoholic. At least I did for the first year. And then it had been some time. I was 16, 17 years sober when I met him. And I remember saying, oh, if you want to have a glass of wine, it won't bother me. If you're holding back, I didn't know his history. Once I saw him drunk, I recognized that he had a problem. And I had to make it incredibly clear. I have a special needs son. There was no way I was going to live with an active alcoholic. And so we ended up splitting up for a month because he said yes, but he didn't want to say yes. So he was angry, right?
oh, Christina here. We're going to show you back on. I'm sorry about that. We've small little technical thing here. And that's strange. You just popped off the screen. Anyway, guys, for those of you guys listening on the live stream, I'm sorry. We had a little issue here where looks like the internet connection went down. So when we get Christina back, what we're talking about is an Ask Amy Can't Say No article
That's
about
right.
a man who says that that he won't he's not quitting smoking marijuana, even though they used to do it together. And basically, she's like asking Amy, hey, like, is it okay now that basically I'm sober and he's high all the time? Is that going to be cool? But Christina, go ahead and continue on with where you're
Absolutely.
at.
So I was sharing my own marriage story and how when I met my husband, I had no idea that he had a drinking problem. He kept it from me. He didn't drink around me. By the time I discovered it, I was already all in. And this happens to codependents, and maybe some people could think that, well, you must have known something, but I truly didn't know anything. We actually matched. And so I built a relationship with him when he was sober. And the minute I saw it, I knew we had a problem. And so I did share with him that there was no way that I would continue to live with an active alcoholic. I have a special needs son, and there's no way I can take care of a second person, nor do I want to. And at that time, he said yes, but he was not all in. He was angry. I suggested 12-step meetings because that was what I knew, absolutely what I knew. And what I understood was we spent the next 3 months with him being secretly angry at me and me not understanding what was happening. And we actually had to split up because there was no way that I could live with somebody who wanted to continue to go down this road. And I remember the heart-wrenching conversation. At that time, I didn't realize he wasn't actively participating in a 12-step program. He was just not drinking. And so the anger was spilling up. You and I always say the real problems happen when you put down the alcohol. That's
Mm-hmm.
when you really need a different solution. And I am a good Al-Anoner, that's the accompanying program to AA, and I'm a codependent expert. So I stayed out of it and the anger grew. And we had to actually split up for a month. but we've been together ever since. And he just celebrated 5 years of sobriety and is coming
Wow.
up on his 6th year. So in some cases, it can work. It can
Yeah.
work.
No, I would. You're definitely the example of that it can work. I think the whole thing though with this article that got me is that it's okay. I can change him.
Yes,
This whole thing, it's like, I would find, and God, I feel like I'm being a pessimist here. I'm going to do the opposite. Is like, I find that most of this ends in heartache.
it does.
People who are sober, who or are non-drinkers, and it bothers them. Let's let they even say that they're alcoholics, right? Recovered
Right,
alcoholics. When they're with somebody who's not even necessarily an alcoholic, but a heavy drinker, right?
right, right.
That usually doesn't work well.
It
I've found.
doesn't.
You know what I found? Because, and I listen to this, you hear it in 12-step rooms, you hear it through coaching calls. It's just like, I'm going to flash back to a clubhouse room that we had in a recovered life discussion. And this woman went on and on and on and on about years that she's been living with her husband, who
Hmm.
is an alcoholic or abuses alcohol, right?
Right.
Constantly, and about just the torture she's had to go through to try to stay sober day to day. So that's my side of it. I'm like, that's red flag, red flag, red flag.
It is red flag. And sometimes, I guess the reason why I believe in what I believe is that sometimes, we have these courtroom cards that get us into the rooms, where somebody's been popped for a DUI. I think that you can get sober for a girlfriend. I think you can get sober for a loved one, especially at the beginning. It can be your entry point and your motivation. Get sober for your children. We end up staying for ourselves. We end up staying. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with her asking for it. What I found to be deceptive was that she was saying it would be a little tiny, practice so they could get to know each other. And they don't know each other. I mean, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
When you are under the influence, we don't know that person totally. I didn't even know myself when I was under the influence. And I've had many relationships based on drinking because that's what we had in common. And when I got sober, and these are friendships or boyfriends, I realized I didn't have anything in common with them. And I really needed to know them. And some of that transition worked. Some people were life partners, life friends. Most of them weren't. So I think it's okay for her to ask for him to be sober, but her expectation has to be that it's sober for life, that it's something.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
something for them to
I
look
think
at together.
I think the key that you said here is so important, and I think your scenario is different because I would say that he decided that, okay, I'm not gonna. I need to get sober for me, right? Like he
Hmm.
maybe sees what is going on around him,
Right.
right, and then says, well, you know what? I think for me, I want to make the change, and that's also going to help everything else, right? I found though that like this whole thing about, and look, having worked with a lot of guys in recovery, I know, like, I can't even tell you, Christina, the amount of times it's like, well, I'm getting sober for her, and then
Hmm.
as soon as he sobers up, right, she's just like, I don't like you, come on, right? And honestly, and anybody who's listening to this, I don't want to freak them out if you're in early recovery, but and many times too, that guys will get sober and they'll say, "Oh my God, like this is not who I want to be with. Like
Right.
this person is not," because a lot of the times, not always, not always, but a lot of the times you will go into relationships, and not just romantic relationships, but friendship relationships when you're actively using,
Right.
um, based on that criteria, not based on criteria of picking healthy relationships.
True, true. All of that is true. However, there is a chance and the right to say, I want to live a sober life and I want my partner to be sober is enough for the woman or the man to say, this is not the life that I want. I love you and you can do whatever you want to do, but I don't have to live with you. I don't have to continue this relationship. And sometimes people get really angry when their partner says that. They get really bitter. I have been working with somebody in the last, 3 years that had this scenario where he wouldn't quit drinking and he wouldn't. And so when she finally moved away from the relationship, he ended up getting sober and he, celebrated a year. However, it was with the result in mind that she would return to him. And that is not the case. And so in that particular case, I can look at it and say, man, that's also not a reason to get sober, because
Well,
you think you're going to live your life.
well, whatever it takes to get sober. So I'm not gonna I'm not gonna parse words about that. I get that, Christian, I get it. But I have to tell you, like personally,
Hmm.
like I think that getting sober for other people long term, if that's what it takes to get in, and I think that's majority of people, they get, look, you're an interventionist, many
Hmm.
people will sit there in the meeting and they'll say, you know what? Clearly everybody's pissed off at me. Clearly everybody's disgusted. I'm going to do this just for them. Right. Like,
Hmm.
so they're almost guilted into it. But along that journey early on, it's got to be for you because I believe, look, one of the things that you learn in recovery is people are fallible, right? Even people who love you the most and are dedicated to you to the most, it's fallible. It can, not only can it change, okay, but they also can make mistakes. People can
Right.
let you down, right? And ultimately, I think you have to be sober for you. That's my own personal feeling on it. You have to be sober for you, like because eventually people leave or they die or something, right? Something happens, and if your whole recovery existence is based on other people, I find that like totally codependent in a way.
It is. It is. So I think you're right on. Eventually, it has to make that transition from I'm getting sober for her or him or them to I'm getting sober and staying sober for me. Now, that could take a little bit more time than people realize. And it's also not a bad reason to stay sober either. There are some days, in the past when things were very, very difficult, I knew that drinking was off the table because I couldn't be the mother to my high support needs son. And that was enough for that day to keep me sober. So I think that we're both kind of saying the same thing. I just know that, red flags can turn into white flags. There can be a surrender for sure.
Correct. And and I think we would be kidding ourselves to think that, look, if people that are in active addiction
Hmm.
could see themselves clearly, if they could think clearly about the data and everything that they're seeing in their lives, they would of course choose, but you can't. That's part of addiction, is that it's very hard to see that. The person who's going through it can't see the full picture clearly, and their mind is telling them something else. So I think everybody that comes in, I would say almost everybody, a large majority of people that come in because of somebody else,
Right.
because they're affecting somebody else, right? And they're like going, oh, I got to go to rehab, I have to go to 12 steps, or I have to go to a therapist or something because what I'm doing is affecting somebody else. And now they're seeing it. They're either going to see that, or like with most alcoholics and drug addicts, they're going to see the ramifications of that if they
Right.
don't do it. So it's like, well, I don't want to lose anymore, so I'm going to do this, right? And then hopefully through that, they get the message to do it themselves that, hey, you know what? I like this. I want to do this myself.
So true, so true. And I think that there is this fallacy out there that somebody has to hit a bottom. And now I'm going to say something that's probably controversy because I believe that my whole life until I was trained in intervention. And I realized they don't have to hit a bottom to stay sober. I didn't hit any kind of huge rocky bottom. The reason why I stayed sober is because I couldn't go to work one day. That was the reason why I started the process. But once I got there, once I started comparing my drinking to other people and realized, oh, that's right, I drink this way. I am a maladaptive user of alcohol. It has cost me. Then I stayed. So, if there's anything that I want to put out is the fact that say something to your loved ones. A lot of people don't say anything when it's just alcohol or just pot, but those things are incredibly dangerous. And I tell people sometimes, If they were putting a needle in their arms, would you be as passive as you're being now? Because they're the
Yes.
same thing.
Exactly. Well, look, I mean, the whole thing about hitting this bottom, I don't believe that either anymore. I used to.
Mhm.
I will say, one of the things that you learn in 12 steps, 12-step groups is that the pain of active addiction and the memory of the pain of active addiction isn't always the thing that is going to keep people into the room, the fear of the pain. For some reason, addiction has this ability to look past all
Right.
the previous data and feelings and experiences and just go for, I need that dopamine hit.
Right
I
now.
need to escape right now.
Mhm.
So it's not a good precursor, in my opinion, of like a low bottom of being able to stay sober long term. I will tell you that. Sorry for the little pause here, guys. We're having a little bit of technical issues here today, I think, with the internet connection. I will tell you that it is not only not a precursor for it. I think that sometimes it hurts people because they come in so beat up that
Right.
it takes them longer to actually gain physical sobriety, longer to detox. And I've seen more and more people come in and with not low bottoms at all, very high bottom, people at the top of their game
Right.
saying, you know what, this just no longer works for me anymore.
So true, so true, and I hope that. I mean, what we know from a biological standpoint is that after 6 months of sobriety, you still only have 50% access to your neural pathways that you've had before. So there's no way for a person until about a year, year and a half to really understand what kind of life they wanna have and what the decisions mean. So hang in there. If you've got somebody, if you are a classic codependent and you have somebody who has expressed an interest in getting sober, don't wait for it to get to a place where you don't have anything left for this person. Say something now.
Absolutely. I think that was I love this article and I love having these discussions and I love not always agreeing too,
Yes.
because the thing is there's different paths to get there. And one of the things that I found through recovery is that you have to stay open because there's different paths to get different. I used to think there was one way to get sober. There's a general path. People have to hit a huge bottom. Everything has to blow up and whatever. And you know what? I've learned through talking with people like you and, your experiences, my experiences working with other people, that doesn't have to be the case. Like we know now, sobriety is much more of a consciousness, right?
Right.
So a low bottom is not a precursor to be able to get into that consciousness.
So true. So true.
Well, Kristina, this has been a great segment. We have much more show to come. And before we move on to the next segment here, I want to talk with everybody about a great opportunity that we have in Recovered Life that you could take advantage of. Kristina Dennis and I created this really great codependency primer e-course. This thing is amazing. And the great thing about this is it only takes 3 days, a couple of hours of your time to really get the concept of this. It's called Can't Say No. It's a free 3-day challenge that you can download, that you can participate in totally for free. Kristina Dennis sends you 3 emails that come to your inbox. And it's a challenge and you go through it. So if anybody's out there that can't say no, what does that mean? You're an over volunteer. You're always a person in your family that has to rescue everything. You're the person that always brings the cupcakes, even if it's totally convenient. You've done it 15 times to the kids event, right? You're
Mhm.
always a person that has to jump in and you really can't say no and you feel bad when you say no. That might be a sign of codependency. So take the free 3-day challenge and you can get that totally for free at info.recoveredlife.us. That's info.recoveredlife.us. Kristina Dennis, we have much more show to come. Much more after this next break here. Any final thoughts on this any final thoughts on this last article that we went over with Ask Amy?
Get some help for you too. If
Get
you're
some
not
help.
the drinker, get some help. We're out here.
Yeah.
We're ready.
Yeah. I think that is really the sign. Okay, we'll be back after this next segment. Here we go. Oh, I guess not. I guess we will not be back after this segment. Hold on one second. We're having all kinds of like the internet today has been very
Not
funky,
our
guys.
friend.
So if you're not our friend today, okay, let's see if we can do it one more time. If we can't, we're just going to roll right into the next segment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it looks like this is freezing up a little bit. So we will. Oh, go ahead, Kristina.
I say before we go to the next segment, I want to remind people how to support us. This episode is being brought to you by Recovered Life contributors and listeners like you. So make sure you like, share, follow, and leave a comment so we know what kind of content to bring to you. You also want to visit info.recoveredlife.us. There's a space to make a donation, which will help us to continue to help others, as well as the entire network that you can join where we have beautiful conversations like this off of the YouTube. Make sure you join it.
Absolutely. So you know what? We're going to jump right back in to segment 2. Thank you so much, Kristina, for telling people how they can really use Recovered Life and how you can help us, right? We've got a thriving community at recoveredlife.us. And it's great. It's a private social network where people just like you in recovery are actually there talking about these topics. Really, it's about this next level conversation that we're having there. So one of the things that we do is a lot of Recovered Life discussions, which take place on Clubhouse. And I want to talk about some of those on TGIFSober. You know, we do this segment, Kristina, every Friday. And it's one of my favorite segments because we look back not only in our recovered life, our week in recovery, but just everything that happened in recovered life. And that's a lot of stuff now.
There is a lot. I love the rooms. And, you know, I learn from also leading the discussion. And this week I had so much, just a total new idea about certain things. On Tuesday in our neuro room, which is a great room, and as Damon said, you can find it on Clubhouse, we discussed the Brene Brown book, Atlas of the Heart, and I learned something about confusion, okay? Nobody likes to be confused, right? Nobody likes to be confused, but that is the place in which we get new information. And she used a term that I think that I'm going to use for the rest of my life, which is optimal confusion. And I love that they put that positive thing before it, because confusion is actually what allows us to assimilate new information. And she was talking about how a lot of people will refuse to take in new information because they don't want to be wrong and they don't want to change their mind. But how if every learning needs to be earned, every learning needs to be effortful. And I really loved that mindset change because I was confused, and confusion is not my favorite, but looking at it that way allows me to start thinking about, oh, okay, actually, this is an opportunity for me to learn. And they're saying that confusion, once you envelop it, once you embrace it, is actually what will open up our minds and allow us to move toward really positive information that we can learn.
Yes, I love that. I hate confusion as well. I really, really, really do. And one of the things with confusion is after you're sober long term, when you have that, especially that addiction confusion, that thinking that comes with it, it's very disturbing for me. Like, I can recognize it. It's like, oh, that's coming up. That's what it is, right? That's what it is. Okay, I totally get it. And I can then just say, okay, I have tools to be able to deal with that. But I find that a lot of people, and it was interesting in the discussion, that people just get into the abyss of it. And I totally related to that. Like, how many people were sharing that they just got lost in that confusion?
Well, and too much confusion obviously has a negative connotation, but so much of the way we feel is by how we define words, which is really interesting to think about. Like, our brain is helping us define this word. We see it and we cross-reference it to, oh, confusion is bad. Confusion makes me vulnerable. When actually confusion is the portal to learning more. And it's that ability to be flexible around the definition and not to immediately go there, not to immediately use some reference point where you've been confused before and follow it all the way to the end, which is, I was confused about taxes. Then I knew I needed to ask for help. I knew that I needed to get on the internet and read things. I knew I needed to incorporate and do a bunch of different things that I had no idea. And it's this expectation that we're supposed to know everything before it starts. Like there's,
Yeah.
and that all has to do with vulnerability. And I love this book that we're studying in the Neuro Room because it has blown my mind for emotions. And I know we say feelings aren't facts, but they sure are clues. They are complete clues on what you need to do next. So from this point forward, when I think about the fact that I'm confused, I'm going to say, oh, this is an opportunity to learn something, because the answers will come. They've always come in the past.
Yeah.
And I can anchor myself to that belief.
I got to take a moment here, Kristina, before we move on with TGIF Sober, to acknowledge the communities that we built here on Recovered Life, because this is exactly what you're talking about. There's a conversation going on in the YouTube Live community right now, which we really appreciate all the support there. And along with the lines of what you were just saying, and people are talking about this last segment that we did with Ask Amy, because I think all this kind of bleeds in together into
Right.
this recovery situation. It's like finding your bottom. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it could be emotional. Like, I agree with you that feelings aren't facts, but I disagree to a certain degree. Like, now I know better. Like when you were saying,
Mm-hmm.
but some feelings, you have to acknowledge these feelings too. I think that, a lot of times feelings that create problems without solutions are facts. So if you're having the same feeling over and over again, right, and it just keeps coming up over and over again, I think those are things that you really have to pay attention to. And I think that one of the disservices that we've heard from 12-step groups and stuff is like, well, feelings are facts. Feelings are facts. It's not real. It's not real. That's not necessarily true, right? I mean, it's not true.
Not in my estimation. I mean, I really believe that feelings are incredibly important. They give us an idea. They give us a clue of something that needs to be healed still, and something that has triggered us from our trauma in the past, just like fear does. Making friends with your feelings and doing the work that we're doing on Tuesday in the room, where we pull apart different names, labels that we have, allows us to not be so afraid, but also to follow the breadcrumbs to figure out why. Because if you're just always shoving it down, you're not doing anything different than whenever you were drinking it away or smoking it away. You are not addressing the core issue. And so we have to be able to accept, I feel sad, I feel scared, I feel angry. Where is that coming from? Because my head knows that this situation is going to be okay. But somewhere inside, there's an alarm in my body going off, and I need to be able to honor that. And this is a big ACOA issue, where actually we were raised with feelings aren't facts. And we can use that as a way to avoid actually doing the work.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to sometimes get to the bottom of you just like, we see a cycle that, just like physical addiction, sometimes you have to get to the bottom of these emotions. Sometimes you do have to hit a bottom, which we were talking about in the last section, right? And I got to throw up, this was for the last thing, but Revved Up Artist on YouTube says, I don't think it matters what gets one there as long as one stays. The truth will bear out. A bottom is relative as willingness to surrender. And I think sometimes surrender is to say, hey, you know what? I have these thoughts or I have these feelings and I think I need to address them. And you're talking about these breadcrumbs, taking these breadcrumbs to get there.
Right. And I agree. I agree with Revved Up Artists, because I do not think it matters what it is. But we can also look at our behaviors that maybe we're not anywhere close to picking up and abusing a substance, but maybe we're trying on every pair of jeans that we have in our closet as a way to avoid the fact that we're feeling less than right now, that something has ruffled our feathers. And so you can use that, and we can all get used to doing some introspective work and looking at where is the source, because I guarantee you it's an outdated belief system. Somewhere along, we do not feel like we are enough, and we do not feel lovable. And you may be surprised, but these feelings that you're having can be a clue if you stop, acknowledge them, and then follow them back to their source. They can actually open up and allow you to grieve properly, something that was stuck. Freeze is the mode that a lot of children learn, right? Because you can't really fight and you can't really flee. You're stuck there in your family home. And so we do this thing called freeze, and we learn how to fawn, right? To keep ourselves safe. So this is a way of you going back and unfreezing, let's say, starting that download again, rather than pausing it. And it will give you freedom.
Well, you know what? There was a lot of conversations this week about confused feelings because let's just be honest, the world's a bit of a dumpster fire right now.
It
Like
sure is.
everywhere you turn, and we don't do politics on the show or whatever, but you'd have to be blind that like to or totally unplugged from society and put in a cave somewhere. To everywhere you look around, it's negative, whether it's gas prices, which we talked about last week, or employment or the cost of things, the state of the world, violence, all this other stuff. And I think I've said this before. I think people that in recovery are sensitive. We're sensitive people.
Definitely.
And especially the people I think that end up getting sober and staying sober. We might not come across like we are, but we are, right? So
Right.
we're absorbing all this stuff. One of the things I learned this week in the Recovered Life community is how much this is affecting people in addiction and recovery.
So much,
Right?
so much. Yes.
People are absorbing this. And in the Wednesday codependency, when you were talking about codependency, and then in my Thursday room, I could feel the sense, even with posts on Recovered Life and comments and stuff, there's a sense of like unknowingness.
Right.
I felt this week that was kind of affecting everyone.
Everybody is unsettled. And, it's interesting that you brought up the Wednesday room and the idea of negative thoughts, because our Wednesday room was all about looking at the positive, not in a toxic positivity way. Right? I do not believe in that. I do not believe sticking your head in the sand and saying everything is great is going to get you anywhere. But it was this idea of making a habit of looking for things that are positive. One of the tools that most people are given in early sobriety, and maybe we keep it up, maybe we don't, is a gratitude list. But having true, actual gratitude towards some of the things, and acknowledging that the world is on tilt, that there is a confusion about what we're supposed to do, what we're supposed to do next, will help. And I love the community because all of us end up saying, similar things like, wow, I feel really confused. Wow, everything that's coming at me has been incredibly negative. I'm not exactly sure what I need to do next. Acknowledging that and following it to its source will help you heal. Plus, picking up your tool belt, like a gratitude list, picking up, honesty and telling somebody, wow, I'm really, really unhappy or, off track right now because everything that's going on in the world, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about it. I don't know what's going to happen next. That really, really helps.
Yeah, it does. Just being honest that you don't know, I think is good. And I think it's a step to be able to, I find it very helpful actually, is just to say, you know what, I don't have the answer here. Because I think one of the things that is problematic with people in recovery is that they believe, okay, now I'm sober. I've overcome all these odds. I have a successful life. My life's moving forward. I'm always achieving things. And I think a lot of the times that we have the answer for a lot of stuff because we've done the deal, right?
Right.
But then when we hit up a wall where we don't have the answer, it kind of freaks us out a little bit because it takes you back to being very vulnerable about like, you know what, this is unmanageable. I want to be able to manage this. And we talked about, this week about last week's show about the trauma thing, about trauma
Yes.
and control. And anytime that's triggered some sort of trauma trigger or any neuropattern trigger, it brings us back to like, well, we have to control this. And I think the whole thing, it's just like, you know what? Hey, we don't have any control about what's happening overseas. I have zero control. I have no influence to be able to do anything. The only thing I can do, and this is what comes back to the helpful part for me, the only thing I can do is I can do what I'm doing, what I'm putting out to the world. Right. Is the only thing that I have control over.
So true. I often tell people when they're like, I don't know what to do, you start with, well, what can you do? And everybody can up their self-care. Everybody can connect with somebody and explain what they're feeling like. Like there are things that we can do to settle our nervous system as we continue to walk through this pathway of a pandemic and, the things that are going on overseas. We can take care of ourselves and bring a little bit of positivity to the world that we are in. And that will help. And so all the time when people say, I don't know what to do, I can't understand, I'm not sure, I always start with, what can you do at this moment? And there's always some work that can be done right at that moment. And that's what you focus on.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about TGIF Sober is we not only talk about what goes on in the community, Kristina, but we talk about what's going on in our lives, what we
Right.
learned this week. And I'll tell you, I deployed something that I learned early on. I had a guy named Kevin O. Shout out to Kevin and Christy. If you're listening to this on the replay, early on in recovery in San Francisco would tell me, it's like sometimes when there's mass confusion, and there's no clear direction ahead that you should take, do nothing. Do
Yes.
nothing. Wait, unless a pit bull is chasing you down the street. And I love pit bulls, by the way. So I don't want any bad comments about YouTube's already firing up about the news here. They're making comments in the stream about the news, about how negative it is. But if there's nothing you can do, sometimes you have to put a pause on that, and you have to hit acceptances to say, you know what, I'm going to wait for my higher power to give me the answer to this. And then on the things that you can do, start taking massive action, this 10x action. And
Right.
this week, I have to tell you, I found myself earlier this week feeling a little bit immobilized because I had a big weekend. I was a little tired. We had a ton of stuff with Recovered Life. I had a ton of stuff with my clients I had to do. And I have to tell you, I was like, but I 10x'd. I doubled down on the stuff I could do.
Right.
I doubled down on stuff that I could do. And I did a lot, right? Like we accomplished a ton of stuff with Recovered Life this week. So it's like, it's so funny because a lot of the things that people, I've heard comments from friends and family and stuff. Oh, you're talking about everything that's going on. No, actually we're talking about what's going on with us in our recovery, as it compares and contrasts with the community.
And that's what we have to do in order to stay in recovery, in order to stay and have the best recovered life. We have to talk about ourselves, and we have to become vulnerable and transparent with a few people. As a codependency expert, I'm always saying, make sure who has the front row seat in your life is somebody that's going to support you. There is so much that we can do for taking care of ourselves. And that's really what we need to do when there isn't something that we can do about the world affairs or the pandemic. We have to clean house and take care of ourselves so that we can be there for other people. The thing that I didn't know was out there was this huge community. I had no idea that when I made that decision to put down the drink, that I was going to be entering into a society of people that all want to do the best that they can. And, most of the time, if I meet somebody who's in recovery, I already know that they have crossed through some of those lessons and actually understand what's their responsibility and what isn't their responsibility, and how can I be of service.
Yes, so much. And you know what? I love the Thursday, the Unstuck room. It's that's the room that I host, and you came in as a guest. That was a great conversation too. I mean, and guys, you could get that on the replay. We're putting the replays of Recovered Life discussions on Recovered Life now. So you can actually get those after we do them. Kristina and I will go put a link so you could listen to the full discussion. If you're not at the place where you feel that like, hey, I want to join in, or what time-wise you can't join in, you can listen to the discussion.
It's so good. And a lot of people ask me how to get those replays. So I'm glad that you shared that. You get them on Recovered Life. The idea, to be able to listen to other people, be honest and transparent about what's going on, is the end of isolation for me. And that alone makes me feel better, to know that people struggle with parenting, people struggle with jobs, people struggle with the pandemic, people are struggling out there. But if we can unload a little bit and feel like we're part of, it helps us continue to focus on our recovery. So it is an essential part. It's an essential part of my recovery. It is.
And knowing that if we can stay sober, that everything's going to be okay. We just take the next right indicated action, right? And that's the key. We were talking about how great it was yesterday in the Unstuck room about how sober St. Patrick's Day, like, because we had an episode about that on Wednesday, and you know how nice it is to wake up the day after St. Patrick's Day and not have the wreckage of that, right? And to be able to just go on with my Friday and I'm going to have a great Friday. And, you know, on the Instagram Live, we were talking, and there were a lot of people there on the Instagram Live last night that were saying, you know, yeah, you know, it's such a big drinking holiday. But if everybody's listening to this and you stayed sober during St. Patrick's Day, you're new in recovery, hey, you made it. You made it another week.
Right. And if you are coming back, we welcome you with open arms. St. Patrick's Day was never anything but a drinking holiday for me. And the freedom that I have knowing I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and do a Recovered Life show, and I don't have to worry about who was there and what I did. And, you know, did I get in trouble? Yeah. I mean, this used to be my old life. I really didn't understand that there was so much freedom in putting down the substance that I was abusing. There was so much freedom in waking up and recognizing I don't have any wreckage to clean up from last night. I have a friend who says she's addicted to hangover-free Sundays, and I am too. I love that. That alone is enough, but you get so much more when you choose to enter into recovery.
Well, that's the key. You know, TGIFSober. It's all about looking back, and we're on the Friday here. We'd like to thank everybody for, you know, listening to the show, everybody that joined us on YouTube Live, all the comments that I've got here. Thank you so much for doing this. You know, this has been a lot of fun this week, and I can't wait for next week. We've got a lot of really great shows next week. And I just got to tell everybody, too, before we end this episode, about Recovered Life, the app and the website, Kristina. This is a really great opportunity for people to be able to jump into the bigger conversation. A lot of people feel lost right now. A lot of people feel that they've been dispersed from a 12-step group, therapy, whatever. This is where that next level conversation is going. This is what it's like having a home group in your pocket, right on your phone.
Totally.
You can click on it at any time in the app. You can get in and join the conversation. There's a network of people in there that are doing the deal, that are in recovery. And the great thing about it, Kristina, is you don't have to worry. It's not like a Facebook group where, you know, I've been part of, where it's just like, oh, I don't really want to share that part of my life with, you know, with business associates or whatever. Like, no, this is great. It's private, and we're in, and it's only the people that in there that are doing the deal, and Recovered Life contributors that are helping people do the deal. So guys, you can join that totally for free by going to recoveredlife.us. And I really hope that we see everybody that's on YouTube and Facebook and that we're interacting with on Instagram, join us at Recovered Life, because it's really a lot of fun.
It is. And you're going to meet people from all over the world. Like, I now have people and associates that live in England, that live in Norway, and we're all over there doing the deal.
Episode 87, Kristina, in the can. Woo! We're done with this. It was really good. We will see you guys all next week for another Recovered Life show. Have a great weekend, guys.
Yes, be safe.
Keep the conversation going. Join Recovered Life, a community of like-minded people who are looking to live their best recovered lives. Membership is free, and you can apply at recoveredlife.us.